Welcome to this special winter edition of Bloomington Today. I'm Tina Mortimer. In December 2010, the city of Bloomington received more than 40 inches of snowfall. To give you an idea of just how much snowfall that is, the city normally receives 40 inches in an entire season. Here to talk a little bit about how the city is handling all of this snow and how you can stay safe this winter is Assistant Maintenance Superintendent Paul Edwardson. Paul, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
So tell us, what triggers a snow emergency?
3 inches of snow on the ground is what really triggers a snow emergency. We may broadcast that through cable TV. We have people hooked up through their cell phones, those kinds of things, but 3 inches is really the trigger.
Okay. Do crews ever plow if there isn't a snow emergency?
Absolutely. We want to try to keep the streets in the city as clean and clear as we can. Sometimes an inch, inch and a half, or 2 inches, we will go out and we will remove that. Now, that is not a snow emergency. It's not a declared snow emergency, but all of our crews will be out plowing streets, cul-de-sacs, and sidewalks.
Okay. And now, snow emergencies, clearing the snow out isn't only important to residents, it's also important for emergency vehicles. Is that right?
Yeah, I think we believe that that's an extremely important part of it, especially in cul-de-sacs where the space is limited to begin with.
Right.
And if there's a need to get large emergency vehicles, for instance, fire trucks in there, we certainly want people to be able to have that service provided to them. And if there are cars and vehicles left out in the circle, it makes it much more difficult for those vehicles to get in and provide that service and do their job.
Okay. That said, what are some snowplow safety driving tips that you could offer for residents who might be behind a snowplow or near a snowplow when it's on the road?
Well, I think a lot of times we see on the news and read in the paper about the Minnesota Department of Transportation and plowing of the major roads in Minnesota, and they certainly talk about the things to avoid, the things to do or not do, and it's much the same here in Bloomington. When we're out plowing, we have large equipment, large trucks, and we need people to give them plenty of space to do their job. In most cases, the trucks here in our city may be backing up more to do their job, even more than they might do on the highways and the Minnesota Department of Transportation routes. So we want people to be safe. Just give those plows plenty of room. Let them do their job, and we'll get out of their way as quickly as we can and have the road plowed so they can safely move about.
Great. After the latest snowfall, I heard a warning about kids playing in snowbanks. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was interesting. With that large snowfall we had in early December, we certainly had some extremely high banks, and I think most of us, when we were kids, we used to like to play outside and tunnel in those snowbanks and make snow forts and all those kinds of things. The problem with that is, though, that we need to, throughout the season, maintain enough space for future snowstorms, and that means we sometimes need to push the snow back from the curb. And if there are large piles on the curb and kids have made snow forts in that, when we come with large equipment, we may not know if there's a child in there. We're just going to take that equipment and push that snow back. So we need kids to understand that they need to stay away from those large piles that are close to the street, whether it's on a straight stretch of street or whether it's in a cul-de-sac, because we may need to move that snow with large equipment.
Okay. And that brings me to my next question. Along with the street plowing, the city also plows sidewalks. Is that right?
That's correct.
And why is that important to keep the sidewalks clear?
Well, the city for many years has provided the service of plowing, removing snow on public sidewalks. It's really a challenging and sometimes daunting task, as we have about 250 miles of public sidewalks. And so we're out there. We have 7 machines that are dedicated to that kind of snow removal. But again, with the snow like we received in early December, that really slows down our progress. And we will ultimately get to all the public sidewalks, but what can happen sometimes is if we have reoccurring snowfalls, we may not be done with all of the sidewalks in the city, and we have them prioritized into 3 different priorities. We have to start over with priority 1s sometimes before we're done with priority 3s. So we would ask residents that any help they can provide in clearing snow off of sidewalks certainly is going to help them and help anyone who is going to use that public sidewalk.
Okay. And how does the city decide what streets and what sidewalks are plowed first? How does that work?
Well, they're prioritized, and it's based mainly on the type of use they get. If it's a street, it's the main streets that have the most traffic in Bloomington. We need to get those opened up as quickly as we can, and then we will ultimately move into the residential areas where there's less traffic. The traffic speeds are slower, and those are of a lower priority. Sidewalks is much the same way. We have a couple of wheelchair used areas in the city where we know there are multiple people in wheelchairs, and our school walking areas are our highest priority. And then we move into sidewalks that are along major thoroughfares where the speeds are higher and where there is more sidewalk use. So we kind of prioritize it the same way, and then ultimately again we get into the residential areas.
Okay. Could you share with us some winter driving safety tips?
Well, I think we've probably, any of us that have driven for any time, we hear that every year, but it's always worth remembering and being reminded of that, we need to slow down. We don't have a bare pavement policy in Bloomington, so there is going to be some snow and ice that's going to remain on some of the streets in Bloomington after we've done a snowplow removal event. And so when we get colder temperatures, that ice freezes and it gets very slippery. When we get 0 or below, we've heard the term black ice a lot of times at stop signs and intersections where cars may idle. So the main thing is just to slow down, give everybody enough room, know that we're going to need a little more room to stop, and especially in today's world of sport utility vehicles and a lot of people having 4-wheel drive vehicles, you can certainly take off from a stop sign much quicker in a 4-wheel drive or all-wheel drive vehicle, but they really don't stop any quicker. So there's kind of that false sense of security that and I drive a 4-wheel drive truck, it sometimes is easy to get going too fast and then realize that, oh, I have to slow down or stop. So we just want people to think about that when they're out there and give everybody a little extra space.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for talking to us today.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Excellent. After the break, we'll be back with Fire Chief Yuli Seal. Welcome back to Bloomington Today. I'm Tina Mortimer, and I'm here with Fire Chief and Emergency Manager for the City of Bloomington, Yuli Seal. Yuli, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
I understand that the city has more than 6,000 fire hydrants. With that amount, it must be difficult to get them all uncovered. Is there anything that residents can do to help?
Absolutely. If residents can, we're encouraging them to clean out around the fire hydrants themselves. Okay. Unfortunately, with the amount of snow we had this year, some of the hydrants are pretty buried, and we've had both public works, utilities, and fire department personnel out clearing hydrants where we can as well. Many of the hydrants that they've cleaned are hydrants that aren't necessarily close to a residence. They're on a busier street or next to commercial properties, but we're encouraging everybody, if they know there's a hydrant there, to try to keep it clear.
Try to keep it clear, okay. Let's talk about being outside in this extreme cold.
Okay.
Do you have any safety tips for us?
Well, the things to be aware of are wind chills, and the outside air temperature. Exposed flesh in some of these real cold wind chills and outside air temperatures only takes a few minutes to start to get frostnip, frostbite, or even freeze. So the key, I think, is to be aware of the weather conditions and wear layers, lots of layers of loose-fitting, warm clothes, hats, scarves. Mittens are actually better than gloves because your fingers stay together and they stay warm that way, where gloves tend to keep them separate and they cool off quicker. Staying dry. If you're outside, especially if you're working outside, you tend to sweat, and when you sweat, you can get cooled off then when you stop that activity, and you can cool very quickly, and that leads to other problems.
Okay. What are some signs of frostbite or hypothermia? What should residents look for?
Frostbite is some numbness or tingling of the extremities, fingers, toes, nose, maybe the skin on your cheekbones. If that progresses to where the skin actually starts to freeze, it goes from where it's very red and tingly to it actually starts to turn white. And once the extremities, either your fingers, your toes, your nose, the tip of your nose specifically, start to turn white, that's indicating that you're starting to get tissue damage. Then you need to get in quickly into a warm area. Don't rub the affected area. You just want to get it warm. If it's fingers and toes, you can warm it up with warm water, warm running water, but you don't want to rub it. And then, of course, seek medical attention because frozen extremities can be very damaging. It can result in damage, and you should have some medical attention to that. Hypothermia is a little different. That's when the core temperature of your body starts to actually drop. And the onset of those are chills, shivering, shaking, cold. In extreme cases of hypothermia, when the person has progressed past that shivering stage and their body core temperature continues to drop, they actually start to feel warm, and you'll actually find people in cases of hypothermia where they'll actually be taking their clothes off because they feel warm even though their body core temperature is starting to drop. One of the side effects to that core temperature drop is you start to get confused. Your brain starts to get confused, your mind isn't working properly, and that results in that odd behavior that you'd associate. Generally, when people get to that stage, they're in extreme danger. They need to be gotten into the EMS system as quickly as possible. If you're just in the shivering stage and you're cold, the key there is to get in to where it's warm. So if you're outside, you should have someplace warm nearby that you can get to, either a shelter like a warming house at the ice rink, a car that's warm or has the capability of getting warm, or the house. So once you start to get cold, you can get in and get warm.
Okay. What about residents who are outside shoveling? What should they be aware of?
Shoveling is a strenuous activity. It's actually a little even more than weightlifting in the sense of the stress it puts on your body, because generally people are walking and moving, shoveling snow, so it becomes part aerobic and part anaerobic activity, so you're actually stressing your muscles as well as stressing your lung heart functions. And because of that, you have to be careful. One of the things you don't want to do, obviously, is do it too quickly after eating. You don't want to do it while you're smoking. Shouldn't be smoking anyway, but if you are, you shouldn't do it while you're doing that strenuous type of exercise. If you have symptoms, pain, whether it's chest pain, back pain, any kind of pain, you should stop doing it. Especially chest pain. Chest pain or shortness of breath under strenuous activities could be an indicator of a heart-related condition, depending upon your age, the kind of shape you're in, and all those kinds of things. If you are experiencing chest pain or shortness of breath, you should probably get it checked, and if it's severe, you should call 911.
Okay. And you should be sure to dress warm while outside.
You want to dress warmly, but in layers, because you're working hard and exercising. If you dress too warmly, then you'll get pretty saturated with sweat fairly quickly. So as you increase the level of exercise and activities, you can pull off a layer and then keep your body temperature where it should be without getting soaking wet.
Okay, great. Let's move to inside the home. A lot of people are trying to stay warm with the extreme cold. How can residents be safe inside their home? What are some things to consider?
A couple of things. One is space heaters. Space heaters tend to be people's answer specifically to cold areas of the house, maybe an area that doesn't heat as well as the rest of the house does. When you're using a space heater, it's very important you keep it away from combustibles. And a good rule of thumb is 3 feet. And generally people like to put them right next to the window or under the window and close to the curtains or close to the wall. And space heaters close to combustibles is a bad thing. The other thing is if you have a fireplace, you need to keep your fireplace cleaned. Preferably before you start using it. You want to be cautious about the things you burn in your fireplace. It should be clean, dry wood. You shouldn't be burning trash or garbage or refuse in your fireplace. And I'm also very cautious about using those composite logs that they sell in the stores, because basically that is wood scraps that have been glued together. They do burn hotter. And the danger of that is because it's burned hotter, it could conceivably start the residue inside your chimney on fire and creating what we call a chimney fire. Chimney fires themselves, generally, if you have a well-constructed chimney, will stay inside the chimney. We get 911 calls where people say their chimney's on fire. We come out, we extinguish it for them. But occasionally you can get a chimney where there's a crack in the flue, or the chimney hasn't been constructed or installed properly, where that fire can then escape out of the chimney and get into the concealed spaces in the house. And when that happens, it causes us to open up walls and ceilings and have to hunt for that hidden fire and create a little bit more damage.
Okay. What about carbon monoxide? That's also an issue, especially in the winter.
Absolutely. Carbon monoxide, well, by state statute, every home should have a carbon monoxide detector within 10 feet of every sleeping area. In this time of year, carbon monoxide detectors, we get a lot more calls for those when they trip. Some of the things to watch for: don't warm up your car in your attached garage. Those fumes, those gases from the car actually migrate into the home, and we've had people get sick. We've had fatalities where people have left their car running in their garage, and that CO has migrated into the home and has caused problems for them. Poorly operating furnaces, water heaters, space heaters, if they aren't not electric space heaters, but they're actually fueled space heaters, either with kerosene or some other kind of fuel like white gas. Those need to be vented. To use a outside fuel space heater, a non-electric space heater, whether it's LP, white gas, or kerosene, those need to be vented to the outside. So if you're using a space heater like that, you actually have to open the window in the room that you're using it. So you kind of start to defeat the purpose of being able to utilize those things indoors. If you have a fireplace and the flue isn't open all the way or isn't operating properly, you can raise CO levels in the home as well. And then a poorly operating furnace or water heater can cause CO problems in the home. So have a functioning carbon monoxide detector. If it's getting upwards of 10 years old, it should be replaced. It should be newer than 10 years old. The battery should be replaced regularly. And if the CO detector actually goes off, call. Okay. And we'll come out. We've got other meters we check. CenterPoint, who happens to be our natural gas supplier in the city, will also respond with us, and they'll check your appliances and make sure that you don't have a malfunctioning appliance.
That was actually my next question. What would be some of the signs and symptoms of CO poisoning?
Headache is one of the first ones. Nauseous, flu-like symptoms, those kinds of things people will complain about, and many times if they don't have an operating CO detector, they'll complain about those symptoms maybe over a period of days. CO, carbon monoxide, builds up in your system. So chronically low levels in your home from a malfunctioning appliance or some other issue there will affect you longer term. Now, it's not the kind of exposure, very high CO levels like a running car in the garage that will kill you quickly, but it will have a long-term effect on you because those carbon monoxide levels build up in your blood. So when you have signs and symptoms of the headache, the flu-like symptoms, and your CO detector is beeping, you've probably had an exposure and we need to check. When we come out and check, one of the reasons not only we check, but we also have Centerpoint come out and check, is carbon monoxide will be produced when whatever is burning the natural fuel is operating. So if your furnace is operating, carbon monoxide will be produced. If the furnace isn't running, those carbon monoxide vapors aren't being produced, so you can actually get levels that go up and down in the home over a period of time. So that's why it's important for us to check those appliances as well as check levels in the home. The other thing that most people don't understand is CO is about the same specific gravity as air in relation to air. Okay. So you can actually get carbon monoxide when it builds up in the home. It permeates everywhere, cupboards, closets, drawers. So when we come into your house, if you've had an elevated carbon monoxide levels, we'll actually open all your cupboards, all your drawers, all your closets, and make sure everything gets aired out when we air the house out.
Okay. Are there any other safety tips that residents should be aware of in the kitchen? Especially this time of year, residents are doing a lot of cooking.
Cooking, cooking fires are the leading cause of structure fires in the state. Cooking-related fires. So very important. Don't leave stoves unattended. We've had a lot of grease fires that have gotten away. It's just very important not to leave it unattended. Don't wear loose-fitting robe-like clothes while you're cooking because that can drag across the burners and catch fire. When you do your cooking activities, it's important to not only pay attention to what's on the stove cooking, but if you haven't kept the oven or the stove as clean as it should be, you can start fires that way or start smoking that way. So
okay.
I encourage people to keep their appliances clean as well as stay in the area when they're cooking. Don't set something on the stove and go outside and shovel the driveway, or go out on the deck and have a phone conference or anything like that.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for talking to us today.
My pleasure.
And thank you for joining us on Bloomington Today. For more information and fire safety tips, all the information we talked about today can be found on the city's website at www.ci.bloomington.mn.us.